Starting July 1st, the MBTA will raise fares by almost 5%. This follows some strong opposition by local officials and activists, and amid struggles by the T itself with revenue and ridership. With some thoughts on the increase and growing needs for the Boston area is the Director of Transportation for Massachusetts, Chris Dempsey. Thank you very much for being with us, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to start with the more recent concern from the T right now, because there are officials there say, look, we don't have the money to do everything that people want us to do.
Yeah. We've seen real leadership from the Fiscal Management and Control Board, which are leaders appointed by Governor Baker to really oversee the management and leadership of the T. And they've done a great job of saying, you know what, part of it is our management issues, part of it is that we need to be more efficient, but part of it is also that we need new revenue from outside the system. And that's a really important point, because we're not going to solve this problem simply by doing more and more cuts at the MBTA, more and more efficiencies. We also need new revenue. And so we applaud them for saying that and having the boldness to do that.
Well, there was once a time, going back maybe 25 years, people looked at the T as a service for people who didn't get out and buy their own car. But how about now? I mean, are things more interconnected, would you think?
I think you're seeing a lot of people across Greater Boston who are making those choices on a daily basis and even on a longer term basis. So every day someone might decide, I'm going to take an Uber or Lyft today, or I'm going to bicycle, or I'm going to take the T. And then in the longer run, people are choosing where to live based on where can they get good access to the MBTA, where's there good bicycle parking or bicycle lanes, where's there a good parking spot available. And so all of those things are factors. And we really believe that it's government's responsibility to start to provide better options for people, more choices that allow them to make choices and bring things into their life that will actually make us all better off. So if we have more options for walking and bicycling and taking the train, then those of us that want to drive have a little more space on the road.
Chris, I want to ask you about the fare increase. It seems the T gets at least some of the message about the burden on riders. What do you think of the decision?
Yeah, so look, on the one hand, it does make sense for the T to be in a position to raise fares modestly so that they can cover some of their costs. On the other hand, when you look at this from a higher level perspective, we're sending all the wrong messages to people, because we're raising fares at the same time that gas prices are near an all-time low. And so we're just pushing more and more people into cars and onto our congested streets. And if we were truly managing and operating transportation as a system, we'd be having a conversation like the one that City Councilor Michelle Wu has raised about having MBTA fares being free and eliminating them entirely. Because we need to ultimately run our entire region more efficiently than we do today if we want to support quality of life and economic growth.
Is there a model for free T fares we can look at somewhere on the planet, or at least a reason for talking about this?
Yeah, there are some places that do it. Mostly they're smaller cities or places in Europe that do it. And I think what Michelle Wu, Councilor Wu, has done is to say, okay, maybe we don't have the ability to do this across the system on day one, but what if there were certain lines, certain bus lines, for example? She said the 28 bus, one of the busiest buses in the system. What if that bus were free, which would both attract more people to the bus, it would reduce some traffic on Blue Hill Ave, and would also allow that corridor to really be the economic lifeline that it should be, connecting people to jobs.
And no time lost on fare collection.
Correct. You get the bus moving that much faster.
Of course, speaking of which, the quality of bus service, the T's not raising fares for buses. I'm hearing some horror stories, like in South Boston, people are waiting in line. I mean, how do you fix that?
Yeah, so I just rode the bus today. I was on the 66 bus, and then I was on the Silver Line 5 from Dudley downtown. My trip was about 3.5 or 4 miles, and it took about an hour. So you're talking about an average speed of 5 or 6 miles an hour at most. That is just poor service. The MBTA bus serves 400,000 riders a day. I'm sure many of the people watching this show are regular bus riders. It's far busier than the commuter rail, even though you hear much more about the commuter rail. And the T's own standard for on-time performance is 75% on time, which is a really kind of a pathetic number when you think about it. They have only met that standard about 10 times this entire year so far in 2019. So they're regularly in the 60s or low 70s for on-time performance. And it's no wonder that people are saying, I'm frustrated with that experience. We need to make that experience work much better for people.
We have heard some good things about a dedicated bus line in Rosendale that's speeding up service. What about the potential for the rest of the city? I know you got to give us some parking spaces to make that work. So is there much room for improvement that way?
Well, so there are going to be trade-offs here, Chris, but we applaud the Walsh administration for moving ahead with that. That area of corridor on Washington Street in Roslindale serves over 10,000 bus riders a day. And they now have a faster trip because they have a dedicated bus lane. Even better is that traffic is actually moving more quickly on that road because the buses aren't fighting with the vehicles, the regular cars, for that space. And so it's been a win for drivers, it's been a win for bus riders. Now it has meant there's less parking on that street, but those cars are able to park in other places, and it's only for certain times of day. So we want to see practices like that expanded around the region. We have roads in Greater Boston, Chris, where more than 50% of the human beings traveling in the corridor are doing it on a bus, and the buses are only 3% of the vehicles. So that's how efficient buses can be.
I want to ask you about congestion pricing. It seems New York City is going this way now. Would that get some of the congestion off the streets in the neighborhoods where these buses are running, you think?
So congestion pricing is a really basic concept that's very common around the world and even in other parts of the country, and now looks like it may be coming to New York City. And the basic idea is that you set up some tolls or you raise tolls, and that generates revenue to improve transit so that you're providing more transit service to people. And you're also giving people sort of more of a choice about their road. But if they do decide to drive, yes, they might pay a little bit more, but they also get a much faster trip. You probably saw, Chris, and I'm sure your viewers saw, that Greater Boston was named the most traffic congested region in the entire country, the entire United States. And part of the reason that that's true is that we're not offering drivers these choices about what time of day to drive, what road to drive on, and whether or not to pay a toll.
I want to get back to the loss of ridership that's going on with the T right now. I mean, some of it's, Uber and Lyft and the mindset of especially younger riders. What about the T officials now to say, we got to get more bus shelters with more real-time information about when the bus is actually going to show up?
Sure.
Is that sort of a sensitivity to what's needed?
I think the leaders at the MBTA understand that they are in a competitive environment. Maybe for decades it was either people are driving or they're taking the T and that's it. But now they have many more options, whether that's bicycling, whether that's taking a scooter somewhere, whether that's Uber or Lyft. And so they need to improve their customer service, and they're acknowledging that. Now that's not an easy job when you're moving 1.2 or 1.3 million people a day, but it is a reality and one that they are again trying to grapple with. Anything that they can do to improve that rider experience, to offer more information, to keep that cost lower, and to make that trip faster is one that's going to be welcome, and it is ultimately going to grow ridership in Greater Boston.
I also want to ask you about a couple of projects that your organization is helping with to improve access to the T, and one involves riders with disabilities in neighborhoods of color. Explain how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, well, so there's a number of programs that are going on there. One is there's actually a program where the T is working with Uber and Lyft to provide Uber and Lyft services to these communities and to these riders that would normally be customers of the ride. And that's opening up kind of a whole new set of opportunities. Traditionally, with the ride service, you have to schedule that far in advance, at least 24 hours in advance. Now it's more of an on-demand service. And so one thing we're trying to do is just better connect people with those options and let them know maybe that works for them, or maybe they don't have a smartphone and that's not a good option. But then where can we give them access to better bus service and tell them about when the bus is going to come, or where are there other social services that can provide them with mobility to get them around? And
you're also trying to set the stage for the arrival of automated fare collection on the Fairmount Indigo line. People have been waiting for that for a long time now.
Yeah, people on that line have been really frustrated because progress has been slow, but it is a line that has a lot of opportunity. And so one thing we're trying to do there is make sure that some of the amenities that come with new fare collection try to come to the Fairmount line first, instead of that line feeling like it's always getting things last, but have it come first instead. Now there's going to be some challenging times in the months ahead as that system rolls out, because there's a lot for the T to learn about it, there's a lot for riders to learn about it, and it's going to require some change on behalf of the riders and the customers. But ultimately our hope here is that it could create a fairer system and allow more access to transit than what we have today.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris Dempsey from Transportation for Massachusetts. In a moment, we'll hear about a new report on civil rights abuses against Muslims in Massachusetts.